Welcome to Executive Access, your home for real talk with industry leaders. I am your host, Jamie Tazi. Today, I am speaking with Hayden Stafford, President and CRO of Seismic. Hayden is a builder. He's brought in by many organizations to lead transformations, including Salesforce.com, Microsoft, and Pega. We discuss how pace is so important, or as he calls it, the metabolic rate of an organization, so important as you lead through transformations. He shares how most leaders are good at working on the business, but many underestimate how important it is to work in the business as they lead. He walks us through practical things he does to prioritize effective communication and how important it is for your team to get to know you and letting them get to know you. Hayden is one of the leaders that I enjoyed working with most in my career. We had a lot of fun, and I believe you will as well. Let's dive in. All right, Hayden Stafford, welcome to the Executive Access. You are literally one of my favorite leaders I've ever had a chance to work with. So I am so thrilled to have you here on the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. I hope you don't say that to everyone, but I genuinely feel that way about you, Jamie. Thrilled to be here and delighted that you asked me to join.
Well, I definitely don't say that about everybody I've had on here. I truly, really like a lot, but I do not, I use that compliment very sparingly. But you'll have to go back and listen to my episodes, though, to find out for sure.
I listened to a few last night.
Very good. Thank you.
You're good.
So, I want to dig into your background and everything, but I love to start with the old growth mindset question because you are definitely somebody that's always moving. What are you doing these days to grow, either personally or professionally?
I'm an avid reader. That's one thing. My company, like a lot of companies, also have investments for personal development. We have an annual. I use that mostly on books. I'm not a big business book type of reader. I find books that are a little different but are about leadership. So reading is a great escape for me. You know, for me, I think the best way to constantly be growing, Jamie, is meeting people. My calendar is full of one-on-ones. I'm a CRO, right? I love CRO roundtables. I'm part of McKinsey's growth roundtable for CROs and sales leaders twice a year. I enjoy that. Any sort of group around CROs, that's the best way, is bouncing ideas off of one another. You're stuck with a problem. The other thing is just one-on-one with people on your team, or people like your team in other companies, head of services at another company, go and learn from them. The moment you stop feeling that you can learn anymore is the moment you should probably step down from what you're doing. And that's why I fill so much of my time with mentorship and one-on-ones, much to the chagrin of my calendar and having free time. But those are the things that I do. And when I escape business, it's through reading, both fiction and nonfiction.
Excellent. What are you reading these days? Anything good?
I just read a book by Dan Carter.
Okay.
Dan Carter is anyone who loves rugby and follows the New Zealand All Blacks will know Dan Carter's name. He's got a great book on leadership. The New Zealand All Blacks are the best rugby team in the world.
I read a book about them. I think Lindsay Swart brought that to the table years ago for us.
Swart,
yeah.
Pee-wee, that's right. Great leadership. Short book, and it takes kind of sport and applies it to business. And I just read a book by a guy named Jacko Willink. He's a Navy SEAL, but he takes the discipline of being a Navy SEAL and applies it to business. I read that. I loved it. I've actually read it twice.
Is he the extreme ownership concept? Yes. Okay. Yeah. I love his work as well.
That's him. And I don't want to say I love military and applying military to work, but when you have a chance to listen to podcasts of some of the folks that led special operations or military, there's a lot to learn in there. I don't know if you know this about me, Jamie. I was actually in the Navy. That's where I started right out of school.
I did know about that. Okay.
Yep. The discipline, the attention to detail, command and control, proper prior planning, that whole just focus on the details and you will do good things. I think it's very applicable in business.
I agree. I was a little intimidated to have a couple, leaders with military background or even currently in the military on this podcast. intimidated because I'm like, I really don't know your world at all. But the more I listened and learned, I'm like, you know what? All of these things should apply to the corporate world as well. And I realized while there are some significant differences, there's more that's the same. And so
Yep.
just love that piece. Well, very
Yeah,
good. I love it. I'm going to add those two books to my list as well, and I'll link in the show notes. Um,
definitely.
well, so your world though, you're the president and CRO at Seismic. And I'm just curious. I know I stepped out of that world. I'm on the periphery of that world through some of my board work. But what are some of the trends in technology that have you most excited today? I always say being in technology is not for the faint of heart. You kind of have to have a growth mindset nonstop. But what is it for you that you're thinking about most often right now?
You talk about growth mindset. If you don't have that in technology, you will fall behind quickly. I mean, I look
Mm.
at Seismic. I've been here now just coming up on 3 years. It's totally different than it was 3 years ago. You and I were at Microsoft. I was there for almost 7 years, and it was a different company from when I started to when I ended. So tech is never, it's always evolving. It's never the same. Obviously, I'd be a fool if I didn't say AI is
Yeah.
driving major tech trends, but AI and in two sides of it, right? The applicability of AI within the systems and tools you use, right as it was really, I mean, everyone used AI in the past, or some models of machine learning that people labeled as AI, but what generative AI has brought to companies' products is amazing.
Mm.
And the efficiency, the productivity, particularly in my space, our buyers are heads of operations, heads of revenue, and heads of marketing. So much applicability there, but also in how you use AI yourself to make your team more efficient. I'll give you a perfect example. Our customer success, the way we support our customers after the sale, it's a piece of any business that is open for translation. Customer success in one company is different from another. But the one thing that is consistent in all of it is servicing your customers quickly, rapidly, and getting in, getting out. And if you've got a large portfolio, covering a number of your customers, that can be automated. A lot of those repetitive tasks, a lot of the signals coming from your customers. If you're not using AI, and we should be using more, and we will be, I'm committed to it. I committed to our board. Taking out those mundane tasks, those repetitive tasks. If you're not doing it, you're going to be in a tough place. We
Interesting.
actually did a survey of AI in enablement. It's a great use case. There's 5 or 6 big use cases in business, but sales is probably one of them. From prospecting, using agentic technologies in the prospecting for SDRs, but also in learning and training, practice and skills development that can be built through AI. Our technology, we use AI to build lessons. Lessons used to take companies a week, 2 weeks, 4 weeks to build a lesson on a new product launch. That's not necessary anymore. You point AI at your documentation, your product information, you have a lesson plan 90% complete in minutes. So it's building it into your technology to make it better, more efficient, but also turning it on yourself to make your team. So that's point number one. The other one is, I think sales technology is ripe for a major change. I call it Rev Tech, so
Mm-hmm.
sales tech, MarTech. You and I were at Microsoft in their business applications group. Back in the day, it was all about systems of record and then, systems of engagement that hang off of it. I think more and more, you're going to be less reliant on those big monolithic applications and have logical AI that sits over the top of it that kicks off actions, insights, activities that either help somebody or does it itself. And it's why I think companies like Salesforce and SAP and Microsoft are all doing these sales agents, sales co-pilots, because the more and more you build on that platform, the more data you get. So it doesn't matter if it's sitting in CRM or if it's sitting something else like Seismic CRM. It's the AI that sits on top that kicks off actions and insights. We're ripe for transformation and consolidation in the sales tech space.
Excellent. Well, I love that you talk about both sides of it. So I heard like operational efficiency, productivity, and because you hear about that a lot with AI, but also the implication to client experience, customer experience can be not just replicating to make something as good as it is today, but a better,
Yeah.
more, but just a better experience for those you serve.
I left customer experience out, but that was inferred.
It definitely
Like
was.
a
Mhm.
lot of what we do, a lot of what companies do, obviously, is about engage them at the right time. Content with context at the right time for the right customer. Most of the shopping in any sort of acquisition is 70, 80, 90% of the way done before you even get there. So more integration with your marketing and sales tech stack to inform the buyer and think about that buyer journey, because most of it is done before you even engage them.
About a quick fun story. So my husband is a soccer coach for a high school, and he was sending out some snips from a book around about soccer that he wanted his team to read to really start understanding the strategy of the game better. And he was sent it last year. He sent it out, and he's like, I don't know if anybody's reading it. I'm asking. They're looking at me blankly. So he used a Google tool with AI. He's like, go, put this chapter in, turn it into a podcast, and it turned it into a 7-minute podcast, like per chapter. And you should have heard it. It was like colloquial. It was like, "Hey, Hayden, we're talking about soccer today." And I was both excited about that and deflated. I'm like, wow, that podcast actually sounds better than mine. I think I just need to AI myself up. I don't know. But anyway, just a fun story. But I love that. And I can tell your excitement around that. So
By the way, the pace of this innovation, I was just today on my lunch break, I took a little bit of time to watch CNBC and ChatGPT, what's the name? OpenAI is doing these 12 releases, the 12 days before Christmas of new tech. It's like the 12 days of AI, they're calling it. And some of the things they showed as teasers is crazy.
wow.
It's around turning pictures into 3D movies. And obviously, anyone who has engaged with ChatGPT 4.0, it's like talking to a human. It's kind of crazy where it's going to go. I mean, it's awesome for business. It's awesome for life. But when you hear your kids, you and I were talking, we have kids in college using it to get smart, or actually not to get smart, but to do the smart work. You start worrying about the dumbing down a little bit of society. I don't know. Maybe I'm just being an old guy,
I
but
think there's some of that, and I think we have to, like any new technology, we have to figure that out as we go. What I will say is, and given that this is a leadership podcast, whenever I see major disruptions like this, what a phenomenal opportunity for leaders at all levels, especially entry level leaders, individual contributors who I say can be leaders in their own right, to step up and lead in a way, because those of us who really embrace it and to really understand and can bring a ton of value to their organization early in career than some of the, anyway, disruptive technologies like this have an
I
opportunity for
will say
leaders to step
you
up.
bring up a good point about leadership, though. We were an innovator at our company with bringing AI into our product because we, as the leadership team, ran towards it. We ran hackathons in the sales organization, the product org, on how to find better ways to apply new
Cool.
technology
Hmm.
trends. And it was amazing. A lot of the stuff that came out of our teams was productized. So while I do have some skepticism around society from a business standpoint, those who don't run towards the innovation, it's having a pace that keeps up with the pace of innovation, right?
Exactly. So we shall see. We'll jump in with both feet and try to learn as we go. So fantastic. Thanks for sharing that. Speaking of leading and transformative things, your brand, at least to me, is around leading transformations. I mean, you were with Microsoft, Salesforce, IBM, and the context of all, and a couple, Pega, now Seismic. The context for all of those leadership assignments was bring Hayden in to help lead a major transformation, right? So you're a
Yeah.
builder. That's what I call you, a builder. I hope that's okay. I'm like totally giving you.
I'm a builder
You're
at
a builder.
work, not with wood and things like that, but yes.
Yeah, you're a builder at work. So, I'm curious, what unique leadership challenges and learning is common through those? I recognize that every different particular opportunity is unique, but, from a leading through transformation, what are some of the things that are similar, and what are some of the learnings you've had?
I think one of the most important thing for new leaders and even older leaders who've been doing leadership for a while is be into the business, into the coal face, understanding what's going on, not only for the real information. That's where reality sits, as opposed to those that might sit back and hear what they hear in emails or on phone calls
Mm,
from people that might be filtered, right? There's a bit of the emperor's clothes syndrome with senior leadership. I have always gotten myself into the business, working on the business and working in the business. There's a big difference between the two. Working on the business is strategy, ways to improve the business, but working in the business means being in with the team. There's a mindset that some leaders say that it's important to be a learn-it-all, not a know-it-all. And I think to learn it all means run alongside your team. Even if you're super senior at a Fortune 5 company, getting down to the grassroots of the business, you're going to get some of the stuff you'd never learn while sitting in the corporate offices. These are where you find the real signals, the real trends. You get the feedback. How's my comp plan working? Different from what you read on a spreadsheet versus what the team is telling you. It's something I've always anchored on, Jamie. You and I work together a bit. It can be a trap. You get stuck in the business. People then see you as maybe not strategic enough, not operational enough. But I think if you're not spending 50% of your time in the business and 50% of your time on the business, you're not going to be able to drive the transformation. You may think you know it all. You may think you've had all the experiences, but back to the aforementioned pace of change in the industry, you don't. I don't. You don't. So therefore, be close to where the action occurs.
I just had a memory as you were speaking, which is that one of the first times I met you, you had just come to Microsoft. I think I was leading in the US business. You were coming to run the worldwide business. I forget what city we were in, but I can actually picture the booth we were sitting in the hotel. It was myself and America Peerless, and you came over, introduced yourself, and sat down. And I remember thinking, what's he doing here? What does he want? Like, what's his agenda? Like, what is he? And over time, I realized you just were, it was a lot of get to know you. So that goes to people and caring, which we'll get to in a second. But also you were asking a lot of questions about the business, and there was no, I don't know. I think back then in the Microsoft days, I was like, what's the gotcha? Is he inspecting me? What's happening? But
What's
it
the
was
pretense
just
here?
getting to know. And it felt really good. I felt the sincere interest in getting to know things. And I like to think maybe you learned a few things more in that booth with a glass of wine or a beer than you did maybe at the business review the following week.
I will admit I don't remember that moment in time, but I remember a lot of moments in time like that. Maybe to my wife and kids' chagrin, I was on the road a lot, but that's the best place to get informed is in those booths over that glass of wine or a beer. I'm a big believer. The other piece to driving a transformation, Jamie, that is so important to me is there's three principles that I live by.
Okay.
I call them Hayden's leadership principles, but anyone on my team would know these: clarity, empowerment, and accountability. And the first piece is really important: clarity. It's not just being clear. I am clear that I want you to do this. No, it is communicating it over and over and over. One time something doesn't land, two times it most certainly won't land. You have to land it 3, 4, 5, 10, 30 times for somebody to understand what our mission, what our goal is. Companies have OKRs, repeating them over and over. In my all hands that I do with my team, it's every quarter. Just had it actually on Monday. I repeated the OKRs and talked about them, and the entire all hands call every quarter is a focus on one or two of those OKRs, of those objectives in the OKRs. It's repeating it, being clear on your expectations and repeating it. That is another major piece of transformation. A company meeting, a staff meeting, a sales kickoff, those happen once, twice, 3, 4 times a year. That's not enough. It's ingrain your message and your vision into your message at every chance you can get.
So is that I'm definitely hearing that piece, which is every chance I get, whether I'm talking to a small team, a big team, we're having a monthly business review. But are there any other rhythms that you create other than the natural things that come up for that you say have been really effective?
Yeah. I like to write. Maybe it's from all the reading that I do, but every leader has their form of communications, whether it's the weekly newsletter or the quarterly. I for many years when I was at Microsoft, I was at Pega here. Every other week, I write a note to the field, and it's usually not about business, but it is about business. Um, you know, I'll give you an example. One of them, it always has a picture with a quote underneath it that ties to the message. And people like readership, whenever I started in a new role and I did these, readership was low and it built and it built. And then I started seeing people were copying that picture or the quote or the message into their messages to their team. It
That's
became
how you know it's sticking.
it's sticking. On one of them, a friend of mine was in the Olympics, and I watched the Olympics, and I was thinking about how much work she put into the Olympics, but then all the people behind her, her nutritionist, her coach, her strength coach, and they get none of the recognition when they're up on the medal podium. And I was thinking about that, and I was like, wow, at work, how many people work in the background? A deal closes or a major renewal happens. The AE or the CSM gets all the recognition, but it's that network of support that people have. So I would write a note about this Olympian and then translate it into work about recognition and support and what that does to create excellence or get on the podium. Those are the sort of mechanisms and how you can land a message. I'm not saying write the same way I do, but find a way to communicate where it's expected, it's regular, and hopefully it catches.
Well, I love that, and the regular, being committed to it on a regular basis. One of CEO that I work with values communication as well, but he's doing a vlog, so he'll do like a bi-weekly vlog where it's like 3-4 minutes where he's just talking about something that's important to him. His reason for doing it is more around connection, I think, and just connecting the team, and the feedback he's gotten from that has just been through the roof. They not only do they enjoy the message and the connectivity to the strategy of the business, but they enjoy getting to know him. And I'm just guessing that your team probably enjoys getting to know your personality and some of the things you talk about as well through your writing, which is great.
It's a great way to connect. It's the human side. If it's always just a business newsletter, it probably won't stick.
All right. So communication, repeatability, saying things, over and over again, and having your method of consistency for that. So that's the first one. It's clarity. That was clarity.
Empowerment, accountability. Yes.
Okay.
And I think inherently around clarity is communication.
Right. Okay. Gotcha. And empowerment and accountability, anything to share there?
Yeah. When I think about empowerment, there's some leaders, you and I know a few, where they're in the weeds with you every step of the way. They're inspecting. I do believe in inspecting what you expect, but where they're in every step of the way. First line managers tend to do that with a lot of their teams. Empowerment is, I'm going to be really clear on what I would like us to do, but then I'm going to give you the tools, the boundary conditions of how to go get that done. Go do it. And I won't inspect. I am not a micromanager. I believe in being hands-off. Yes, I like to know what's going on, but I won't micromanage. Therefore, you find the way to achieve that goal. You might be in Germany or Australia or selling a different product than that person. So it all has to be different. The moment you start creating variability, comp plans, go-to-market motions, you start overcomplicating the business. So empower your teams. Let them have the go. And then, of course, with that comes accountability. Accountability in the form of Hall of Fame, Wall of Shame. Big fan of that, posting how people are doing against that mission, having pretty tough compensation and benefits that are tied to, particularly in go-to-market, that really reflects that accountability against your empowerment. And then the last piece is, I wouldn't say, up or out, but having a strong performance-minded mindset within the business. And, you set your expectations of what you expect and you don't get it, the consequences are known. Again, not being the heavy hammer, but when you empower people, you're giving them the autonomy and the authority to go do what they believe is necessary in their part of the business.
I like that you put those next to each other, empowerment and accountability, because I've seen examples of where people want all the empowerment, but they're not willing to sign up for the accountability, or they feel like they have all the accountability, but are they really empowered, right? So having both of those together, I think is really powerful. And I also believe in the performance mindset. I would say, I keep saying that the more I progress, the more I'm like the TSA, if you see something, say something. I
Yeah,
used to let
yeah.
things go because I didn't want to be nitpicky, or I didn't want to be just like, oh, that's so annoying that Jamie's like correcting me on something. But um, I've come to realize that it's actually kinder to let people know where they stand around their performance. They appreciate that clarity, to bring it back to your other point.
Yeah.
And you can make course corrections small versus letting things get out of control.
Amy, you just touched on something that is so important, and that's feedback.
Mm.
And you've got to watch it as a leader, because feedback can be taken as, a put down. But if you do it consistently, then I think it becomes expected. I've got two instances just in the last couple months. We had a series of events at various cities. It was a cookie cutter production, and we had a person that ran this roundtable, and it was really not a great out of the gate performance. We provided feedback about tone, pace, volume, eye contact, etc. So much of a better second performance at the next city. Came and asked for feedback after the second one, gave it. Third one, perfect. Otherwise, that would have probably continued and we would have all been frustrated. The other one, we were going through something rather difficult, and someone wrote an email to her group. This is just recently, last week, actually. And the ending line was fairly stern, um, about you shall do this.
Hmm.
And I just reached out to that person and said, just in the context of everything else you're writing, that last line might have not landed well. Maybe next time, tone it down, and maybe you give them a little bit of an uplift off that email. And these are people, below me in the organization. The risk is, making these people feel bad, but if you gear it towards performance and being better, both of them took the feedback extraordinarily well. So give feedback, but do it in a human way.
Yeah, I think that's really good. And just in the context, if it comes out of the blue and it's not something you do,
Right,
right?
right.
Excellent. So, one more thing on transformation. I tend to work now with CEOs who are new to their organizations, and a lot of times the boards are asking them, they've been hired to drive some type of transformation, right? And one theme that I'm seeing over and over again is that they struggle with, or not struggle with is the wrong word, they face is the right pace of the transformation, right? How do it got me to read all this work. I'll link it in the show notes, around adaptive leadership, which is how do you honor the past and know what to bring forward, yet drive the change that you're looking to do, and how fast can you do that, and how do you bring people along? And I wonder, as you've led all these transformations, if that resonates with you around pace.
Oh, does it ever? I use the term metabolic rate. I don't use pace, but it's the same thing. What is the metabolic rate of the company's tolerance for change?
Hmm.
You cannot go from being overweight and out of shape to in shape and at your playing weight overnight. You've got to work into that and to make that change happen. So many leaders get tasked with that. Oh my God, we got to do this different, or the board said we got to do, and then you're off and running. And you've got to think about the metabolic rate of your
Hmm.
org, even your business, your team, your business, whatever. And I will admit something. I screwed this up in a big, big way,
Hmm.
at my last job, the one before this. I won't talk about the company name, but I was brought in to drive a big shift in growth, and revenue. I came in, I did all the listening tour, big advocate of that, of the team, of executives, of customers, of partners. And I realized I needed to make some pretty material leadership changes in order to cut down the inertia and get, new bodies and new mindset in to drive this growth agenda. I came in ignorant to the metabolic rate of the company or the pace that the company could handle, and I moved fast. Brought in a lot of senior leaders and mid-level leaders, and overnight, within 7 months, 2/3 of the key leadership roles around the business were new.
Hmm.
And I created an us versus them, and a pace that the rest of the company couldn't keep up with. And it created a lot of friction. It was probably one of the times that I think I've made one of the biggest mistakes,
Hmm.
was moving far too fast. Now, on the flip side, the role that I'm in today, I had a little PTSD from that. And I was like, okay, I'm going to slow down. And I was brought in for another reason here. And we're going through that. And it's more rigor, structure, discipline in the way we operate. And I didn't go at the
Did you
pace.
ever rotate back in the other direction? Okay.
Exactly,
Gotcha.
exactly. So, and I look back now, 3 years in, I could probably move faster. It's finding that pace, that speed, that metabolic rate that the company can consume. It's easy to say, but you have to do it. You have to find that metabolic rate.
And you mentioned signals earlier. Like, are there signals when you're in the middle of it that will tell you whether your pace is too fast or too slow now that you reflect on those two experiences?
Goes back to the first question you asked. The signals are the word of mouth from the coalface, the team on the ground. Some of your leaders may have chiefs of staff or business operations leaders or business managers. I have one of them. I use that individual, or have used those individuals, to kind of get feelers out, because a lot of times it's the emperor's clothes syndrome. They won't tell you exactly what you want to hear, but there's ways to find out. I think really regular, repeatable company surveys are a best practice. We do them twice a year. Very similar questions. You can get trends. Of course, company surveys are good, but finding ways to get real-time feedback from the field. Comp plans. You want to change behavior, you slam a comp plan in, there's going to be a lot of grumbling. Find a way to get the information from the team that's feeling that effect right away. I've got several ways in which I could give that we do it, but getting those teams on the ground, trusting you because you're locking arms, working in the business with them, is a damn good way to do it.
That's great. I think even just the wisdom that you share just around just being aware of that metabolic rate. I actually like that term better than pace, especially because I'm spending a lot of time thinking about health these days. But so really good examples. By the way, I just reminded me of Jack Welch came to speak one time, and I had an opportunity to be in a senior leaders forum with him. And he was talking about this topic a little bit, but he said, you know how you know when you're saying something to a bunch of people and you get a weird look, someone kind of, for anybody watching a video, they're kind of doing this, right? They look at you strangely. He's like, don't gloss over on that. You find out what's going on, because what that look means is that they know something you don't know, and you better go find out. That was what he said in his sort of gruff way.
Look, that is so true. And in a world of disseminated teams post-COVID and everything's virtual, one of my win formula tick marks when we've got, we're doing deal inspection is, have you met the customer face to face? And even for our support teams, make a point of getting face to face with your clients or prospects, because those signals, we're losing those signals by Zoom.
Yeah.
We really are.
Good stuff.
The art of face to face and those signals, like Jack Welch was talking about, is so true.
Excellent. All right. So thanks for the info on transformations. The other thing I wanted to ask you about is, you have a reputation. I know this because I worked with you. I see it and hear it from others that we both know. Your care for people. You really do put people at ease, and you seem generally interested in knowing people. Although if I didn't know you when I was listening to this podcast so far, I'd be like, dang, I'm not working in his organization. He's driving a tough operational ship, right? So it's kind of the balance, which is super interesting. But, say how some of your leadership principles around people and people leadership.
Yeah. You and I have talked about this a while ago, but I've done a little bit of writing, and I talk about it a lot, of leadership through inspiration or leadership through intimidation. Leaders generally come in those two forms, and both of them are effective at driving results. Intimidation, people are afraid, therefore they respond to get things done so they don't feel the wrath. Leadership through inspiration, obviously people line up behind, they'll work the extra hours, they'll take the hill, whatever the case may be. Both work. There may be even a time for both to be applied. I'm not saying it's one versus the other, but I'm a believer that a leader who leads through inspiration, that leads by being at the front, by being genuine and accessible, having regular time on their calendar for their team, not direct reports, but the individual contributors. Recognizing gratitude. Every Friday, I have 90 minutes on my calendar blocked for Thank Fridays, and I take time to write thank you notes. I asked my team, give me some stories of what was good with your team, an SDR or someone on the delivery teams. Being genuine, inspiring people by inspiring them. I'm a big believer in that. Now, there are times when you might have to put a little intimidation in, and I think great leaders find that balance. I've got a particular team in for a frontline manager and the sellers underneath them who's struggling right now and been struggling for a while. And I decided, well, it's time to put a little heat there. And I was going to do a every Saturday call with this person and their team and do inspection and really dig in. And I was like, why am I punishing myself? This team lives overseas, so I scheduled it at a time so it was late on their Friday afternoons into Friday evening, and we're doing it over and over and over. That's a little bit on the intimidation side. And I think knowing that line and being hyper aware of, am I in that intimidation zone or inspiration zone? It's an important attribute of leadership. And I always err towards the inspiration side.
Such an interesting point. And I think people have a natural proclivity, and I definitely am the inspiration side, but it's also bitten me a few times where I just generally, the way I see the world is people want to be part of something bigger than themselves. And so an exciting vision and going to Camelot is where people want to go and they want to be part of this. And so I always err on that side. And I would say 90% of people really are like that and get excited and buy into that, and they do great work. But every once in a while, my friend was saying, leadership is a one-on-one sport. It doesn't resonate with everybody. And so if the outcome you're trying to drive is around engagement and outcomes, you may need to flip the script on that a little bit and to say, okay, well, the motivation thing and the inspiration thing isn't driving the results. So we're going to talk about outcomes, accountability. You're dialing up the accountability lever, right?
Yeah. I do try to walk both sides.
Mm-hmm.
You said earlier that I'm generally seen well by people in the field, but when you do have to come down hard to send a message, it needs to be very pointed and people know you've just crossed over there. And we had a quarter where it wasn't great, and I sent an email, as I do at the end of every quarter, recapping the highs, the lows, the good, the bad, the ugly. And it was quite stern, and I wanted to send a message. And the feedback that came back was demotivational. That was demotivational. And I worked at one of my former companies for a very difficult leader, CEO of the company, very difficult. As soon as he or she left, the company changed, the culture, the behavior, the performance, because it was all intimidation all the time. This individual, I remember saying, because I was a chief of staff actually for someone that worked for him, that I don't go on vacation because the moment I go on vacation, everyone else takes their foot off the gas. Come on, that's really counter that with our former CEO that we both worked for, truly an inspiring person that has changed the culture of the business overnight. And even if he were to leave, that behavior will persist and last. So great point. It doesn't resonate with everyone. Find the balance. It's not about doing one all the time.
I had I was at a presentation once, and one of my points, I always have 3 points. One of the points was around caring. I might have been using the Microsoft Model Coach Care framework, who knows? But one of the points was care. And somebody came up to me afterwards and they're like, Jamie, how can I demonstrate care more? How can I do that? And the way they asked me the question, I was like totally perplexed. I'm like, maybe you can actually care, like actually care, right? Like actually care about your people. And I think you've given us a lot of great frameworks for some tactical things you do, like reserving 90 minutes every Friday to write thank yous. That's a great practice that reminds you to do something that you have the heart to do and that has a big impact on people and your team.
Yeah.
But people can tell the difference between, going through the rote motions of something you learned in a leadership book and that actual genuine caring. And I think when you do care and you consistently do things like the thank you notes and act in a certain way, you've built up so much in the bank of trust that one email every so often, I bet you it wasn't demotivational. I actually bet people were like, wow, okay, he means business. We better step up and perform. But I will tell you that, so in case anybody, I'm building up to this point, in case anybody wants to know what I'm talking about, I prepped like crazy for this interview, even though I know you. I went through all of your posts for the past 3 years. Just what does he post about? Consistently over and over again are posts about people and how you care. There was one LinkedIn post where you wrote, "Hi, I have this temporary EA. She's amazing, executive assistant. She worked for me just for a couple of months where my very amazing EA was out on infant care leave. And we unfortunately don't have room for her in our company. But if anybody's looking for an EA, please, please, please reach out to this person," right? And I thought to myself, here is, a CVP of an organization taking time to help an EA that they care about, get placed. That's what it's all about. And there it was. So the pattern. So anyway, I know I'm not probably making you embarrassed, but I think I wanted to get this point across that it's not good enough to go through the rote motions. There has to be the actual intent there, and people can tell the difference. I don't know how that happens, but they can. Sorry, you.
I appreciate you saying that. I'm not embarrassed. I'm very appreciative, Jamie. I think my advice there, most people are like that in life.
Yes.
And when you have that moment that impacts you a little bit, I really like that temp EA. She worked really well, but we didn't have a spot. And I wanted to help her. Anyone probably feels that, but act on it. Act on that impulse. Not on impulse. Act on that feeling and do something about it.
Yeah.
So many executives, and I truly believe this, paint a picture of being an executive. I'm important. I've got to watch what I say and sound powerful.
It would be silly for me to write a post about an EA. People will think I'm not spending my time effectively 100%. Or something. Right.
Put yourself out there. Be human.
Yeah.
Is I think what it is.
I think that's great. Well, there was another one too. There may be another lesson. There was one that you wrote in there not too long ago. I can't remember. I looked for 3 years. Maybe it was 3 years ago. Maybe it was last week. I don't remember. But you were. It must have been recently because it was about Taylor Swift and her boyfriend.
Well, my daughter's been a Swiftie for years, but for boyfriend, you're probably talking about Travis Kelce.
Travis Kelce, thank you. Yeah. And I don't really follow it. I didn't really care, but I noticed it got some crazy amount of likes. And so I was just reading, because you were just putting yourself out there. You're like, what? I can't stand how people are making fun of their relationship. It's not okay. And I thought, really? That's what you're posting about? And I read the comments to see what people were saying. Man, they love the post. Thank you so much for saying this. This is absolutely right. Thank you for sticking up for strong women. Thank you. And I thought, wow, he's, this is something you're passionate about and on behalf of your daughters. And people were really responding.
Yeah, that one got, I think, some of the most post reactions, impressions I've ever gotten. And that was written one night. I was watching a football game. Might have been the Super Bowl. And it just pissed me off, the hate. And I'm like, because no one was hating Travis Kelce before he was dating her. They were always hating her because, she's a successful woman. And I wrote it with the glass of wine in my hand, actually a beer. I remember writing it. And again, it was being human. There is a risk in, being human is you've got to have that filter. So maybe it's good to sleep on it for a night or two. But my advice to any leader is find that human element and do it over and over, and not intentionally when it strikes you.
I think that's great. And what that I could tell did for me and for others was it just gave a little glimpse about who you are, what you care about. You wrote about your daughters inside that post. So, okay, he has daughters. And I think leaders that show a little bit of themselves, that human side, people are interested, and that transparency really works. So not everybody has a different comfort level of what they're sharing, but I would encourage leaders to bring their whole self to their work 100%. The same way that they're asking the rest of their team to. So anyway, you do that really well.
Thank you.
Well,
appreciate it. It means a lot actually coming from you. Thank you, Jamie.
Well, it's so fun. Not everybody's going to want to subscribe to you on LinkedIn. You should. You never know what he's going to get. You're going to be like, man, it's crazy what's coming out of here. No, I'm just teasing. You're always super appropriate and fun. So, by the way, you have a bunch of articles too. You haven't written in a while. So I'm going to encourage you to go pop one up there pretty soon. You write because you're really good at it and you have a lot to share. So
Thank you. I do need to get back to it. It's been stopped pretty much since I've been in this job. It's been a lot of work. Working at a small company is very different than working at a large company in terms of how long the day can be.
I bet. Well, I want to be respectful of your time. But real quick, before I ask you my final question, I know you read a lot. Are there any other books or frameworks that have been really would be useful to my audience around leadership that come to mind? First 90 Days keeps popping up like crazy these days. That's
I'm
the
going to give
renaissance
you
of
a
the
book
Yeah.
that is not a business book,
Okay.
but it just popped into my head based on the conversation we just had about leadership through example and being human. Have you ever heard of a book called The Power of One by Bryce Courtney?
I don't think so.
Best book I've ever read. It's fiction, but it takes place in like the 1920s, 30s, and goes on through the 60s, 70s. It follows a boy through apartheid in South Africa, and it's such a good story on leadership and being a role model, and it's the best book I've ever read. The Power of One by Bryce Courtney.
Thank you for that. All right. I'll put that in the notes for everybody as well. All right, Hayden. Well, I feel like I could talk to you forever. And I'm just so glad that this podcast, even if nobody ever listens to it, has brought us to reconnect again. No, they will. They're going to come in droves. I'm just declaring it right now. All right. Well, if you could wrap by just giving one piece of leadership advice, what would that be?
Career advice, leadership advice. Don't pretend to be a leader. If it's not in your DNA, recognize where you belong and the role. Like, I think a lot of people aspire, I'm going to be a leader of a team. I want to lead the Americas. I want to be a CRO. Go where your heart takes you, where your excitement and joy comes from. Don't do something that you don't really want to do. I'll give you an example. I always was like, I'm going to be a CEO. I want to be a CEO. And over the years, I've learned more and more about what a CEO does. And it was about 4 years ago when I was like, I don't want to be a CEO. Be true to what you really want, because you won't be good at what you're doing if it's not what you really want. So that'd be the one piece on career advice. And the other piece is help people. Great leaders are great mentors. Great leaders are great coaches. The people around you are who are going to make you successful. Overemphasize, oversubscribe on making your team better. That a lot of leaders and whatnot, I've heard them say, I hire people smarter than me, better than me. Yep, do that. But emphasize and invest in their success, their recognition, their development. I think a lot of leaders forget about that I'm entitled to this role and I'm going to push it and I'm going to nail my numbers. Yes. The greatest thing is a legacy, and the legacy is the people you've helped grow into the next generation of leadership. That's my advice.
I think that is the best advice. Help people. Thank you for that. All right, my friend. Well, keep doing all the amazing things you're doing at Seismic and everywhere else. And just thank you so much for being with me and with us today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. Join us every Tuesday for insider access to executive leadership.